live author reading. I actually have this week, next week, and one more week, and then I'm done for the time being. I am kind of giving the whole thing a facelift, hoping to, you know, bring a little bit more readers, bring a little bit more interest in, and I'm already kind of working on some things to make it better. So we'll see how it goes. But anyways, so what I do is I get two authors who voluntarily send me some excerpts. I'm going to read those excerpts. I used to be a wannabe audiobook narrator, so I try to put a little bit of flair to it, if you will. Try to make it an exciting read. On top of that, I have a website where I store all of this stuff. So let me bring that up for you guys so you can kind of see what I got going on. So here's on my website, atlascreedauthor.com. And this is what it looks like. Of course, like I said, it's shut down for the time being. I'm no longer accepting submissions, and I got to fill out the last day right here. But you can see all my previous readings every week, and this week's is up. I do the author cover, the synopsis. There's a link to where you can go click and purchase the book. There's a link where you can go support the authors. Both authors are in here. Both are in there. And once I'm done with this, YouTube takes about 24 hours to make the video available to me. But once I do that, I cut out just the reading and I put it with the author's stuff. So they'll have the video as well as the synopsis and all the links and anything. Anybody can visit the site. The authors can use those readings for their own advertisement purposes and so on and so forth. So that's a quick overview of what we've got going on. And we're going to dive into this. Let me go ahead and bring this back. And as you can see, we've got some phenomenal covers today. Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah. I'm really excited. I've yet to have a book or an excerpt that I absolutely hate. Everything has been great. There's so many talented authors in this community, and I'm happy to support them in whatever way I can. Like I said, I am ending this process in the next 2 weeks, but I do hope to have something a little bit more engaging coming up soon. And we'll see how that goes. I'm building some stuff in the background. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring up the first reading and get my face out of the way. So we've got Witch's War by A.K. Stuntz. And typically the authors, well, not always, sometimes the authors will send me where this excerpt is from their book. In this case, she did not. So I'm just going to read this little excerpt. Hold on, let me pull it up here. Let me get some water and we'll get started. Favorite author of Tentacles Descend. Pebbles, I just got this live back. I don't want to ban myself so soon. Whatever, we're having fun. Send it to me. I'll read it. Let's do it. Okay, so as you can see, beautiful cover here for The Witch's War by A.K. Stuntz. And I'm going to go ahead and get into the reading. I'm not going to read the comments as I go, just so you guys know for anybody who's new here. But by all means, communicate, and I'll try and read over the comments once I'm done with my reading. The sun trickled into the cave through the top of the pile of rocks. Tamara stretched as she stood, and the events from the day before tumbled through her mind. She struggled to wrap her head around Ernest killing the king. Tears stung her eyes as images of the sword slashing off the king's head flashed before her. Maybe she didn't know her husband as well as she thought. She stepped up to the mouth of the cave and reached out her hand, aiming for the rocks covering the entrance. With a steadying breath, she lifted her hand, and the pile of stones rose and moved to the side. Tamara walked out into the early morning sunshine, soaking up the rays of light filtering down through the tall pine nut trees. Her first instinct was to run to the circle and transport to Hartwell, the palace of the witches. But Ernest knew where the circle was now, and if he was smart, he would have guards waiting there to capture her if she was dumb enough to show up. She would have to travel by foot to her private hut and teleport from there. Keeping the secret house from Ernest for the last couple of years had been hard, but now she was glad there were still some things he didn't know. She headed east, away from the castle and the ring of stones. It was a beautiful day, and she might have enjoyed the walk had it not been for the despicable deeds of her husband nagging her every thought. Ernest had never been interested in power before. He always told her he was happy just being a soldier. When had he changed? After 40 years of marriage, she should have been able to see something was wrong. His betrayal stung, but the way he looked at her in the castle, like he cared nothing for her, stabbed at her heart. In the span of a heartbeat, she had watched her once loving husband become a completely different man, a man she didn't recognize. And she had no idea what could have caused him to become so violent. She didn't have time to think on the matter any longer. A patrol of soldiers was headed her way. She ducked behind a large oak tree, surrounded by a briar patch. Fear gripped her chest, and she tried to make herself as small as possible, hoping they would pass by and never see her. She crouched down, closing her eyes as she waited for the men to march by. 4 rows of 3 soldiers stomped past, their boots kicking up dust. Tamara covered her mouth and nose with her hand to stop herself from coughing. When the dust settled and the sound of marching feet could no longer be heard, she allowed herself a sigh of relief to slip through her lips. The group was small. She could easily overpower them with magic, but then she would be weak and might not be able to perform the spell to teleport to safety. After several minutes with no sign of any soldiers, she crawled out of her hiding spot to start her long trek once more. She hadn't even taken 2 steps when a young man stepped out from behind one of the trees along the path. Tamara stopped. Her heart jumped into her throat as she held up her hand, a fireball resting in her palm. "Take another step and I'll throw it!" The young man raised an eyebrow. "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have told the others where you were hiding." She narrowed her eyes at the man, but didn't extinguish the flame. "What do you want?" It was plain to see he was a soldier. The metal breastplate and red insignia gave him away. His boots and sword were another reminder of what he was. "I want to assist you." His armor jingled as he took a step closer. "I will throw this if you do not stop moving!" He stopped in his tracks and held up his hands in surrender. "I just want to help." Tamara glared at him as she tried to decide if he was stalling her until a larger mass of soldiers could get there. "You're one of the king's guards. Why would you want to help me?" "As I know you are aware, there's a new king. I don't like him. I don't like how he came into power. I refuse to serve a man who could kill in cold blood." Tamara lowered her hand and let the ball of fire die. "All I need from you is to get out of my way. I know how to handle the new king." "How are you going to get around all the patrols out looking for you?" "That's not really your concern. Now please, get out of the way." She tried to step around him, but he blocked her path. Her lips formed a tight line as she glared at him. "Move, or I will make you move." His eyes widened as the meaning of her words sunk in. Bowing gracefully, he stepped to the side. Tamara walked past, watching him closely. She thought about knocking him out just to be certain he wouldn't cause her any more trouble, but she couldn't bring herself to hurt him, since he hadn't done anything to her. A few feet down the road, his voice rang in her ears. "The guards will be coming back in 2 minutes." He leaned casually against a tree. One booted foot crossed over the other as he whittled a stick with a small knife. She blew out a breath. He wasn't going to be easy to get rid of. "And what do you suggest I do?" "You could hide again. That worked well the first time. But I would imagine you aren't going to get very far if you have to duck for cover every 10 minutes. That's the time between patrols. I can guide you through the woods around the soldiers." The clanging of metal echoed through the trees. She didn't have long to decide. "Fine. Lead the way." Normally, she wouldn't need a guide. The forest was like her second home. She knew every inch of it, but she didn't know the patrol pattern. The young man's face lit into a smile. He folded the knife, shoved it into his pocket, and pushed himself away from the tree. "This way. Follow me, please." He seemed way too happy for a man who just betrayed his king. Tamara shook her head as she trudged into the woods after him. If she were smart, she would use her magic to render him unconscious and take her chances alone. This man wasn't like the other soldiers she'd encountered. Most of the soldiers seemed hard and uncaring, but this man had kind blue eyes that sparkled in the light, and a carefree attitude that made her feel at ease. Horses' hooves pounded on the dirt, sending Tamara scrambling for cover in a thick patch of briars and bushes. The young soldier crouched down a few feet away behind a large green bush with little red balls on it. The horses thundered past, snorting. The riders yelled orders down the line as they rode, never stopping to actually search for her. The hairs on the back of Tamara's neck stood up, and she glanced over to look at the soldier helping her. Her eyes went wide. He was gone. While her attention was focused solely on the horses and riders, the young man had slipped away. She chastised herself for being so naive and trusting. Her need to believe all people had some good in them occasionally outweighed her better judgment. When she was sure that the men weren't coming, she slowly backed out of her hiding spot, spun around, and came face to face with the young soldier. "Where did you go?" "Relax. I had to check in with my captain." He turned and walked away. "Come on. We need to go before the patrol comes back." Tamara stayed right where she was. Warning bells went off in her head. He just talked to other soldiers. He was going to betray her after he gained her trust. She straightened her spine and lifted her chin. "Thank you for your help, but I can manage on my own from here." He stopped and turned to face her. "You still don't trust me?" "I'm Drew. I work for the Order." She stared at him. "I didn't know the Order still had anyone inside the castle." He seemed so young to be a spy among the king's men. She furrowed her brows, taking in the man before her. The sleeper, as they called him, hadn't been used for many years. This couldn't possibly be that man. He shrugged his shoulders and started walking again. Tamara followed behind, playing over in her mind everything she knew about the sleeper. There wasn't much. Only Hunzel knew who the man was. All she had were bits and pieces of information she overheard from others on the council. She wasn't high enough in the Order to be privileged with that information. Tamara was content for the moment to go where Drew led her, while her mind tried to make sense of things. Suddenly she stopped and looked at the woods around her. She never told the soldier where she needed to go. So where was he taking her? To her left was a crooked tree with the top broken out of it. To her right, a dry creek bed. She knew where they were headed, and it wasn't a safe place. She called upon her magic and produced a rope of white lightning. In one swift motion, she spun the crackling string of light around Drew and pulled him back against a tree. The whitish-blue glowing rope wrapped around the trunk, holding him in place. "What are you doing?" Drew struggled against the magical rope, but without magic of his own, it was no use. "Did you think I wouldn't recognize where you were taking me? The new king knows where the Ring of Stones is. He'll have men there waiting. You're working for him." The man quit struggling and shook his head. "I'm not working for him. Well, I'm kind of working for him, but not in the way you think. I mean, my loyalty lies with the Order. I vow it on my life. The Order doesn't exist anymore. I'm sorry. I can't trust you." She lifted her hand, and levitated a large limb, cringing as it cracked the young man on the head and his body went limp. The rise and fall of his chest let her know he was still alive. She released him from her magic and let his body slump to the ground. This was a journey she would have to make alone. Time slowed, and Tamara found herself hiding every 10 minutes as soldiers patrolled the area. Thankfully, the woods were thick with bushes, briars, and large trees. The closer she got to her destination, the less she saw of the soldiers. After 2 hours of walking and ducking for cover, she made it to her secret place. Tucked away deep in the woods sat the small hut. She'd only used it a handful of times, and no one but her and Hunzel knew about it. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing one room with a fireplace against the wall. Dried herbs posed on the shelves and glass jars, and a cloak hanging on the hook by the door. A thin layer of dust covered everything, a reminder of how long it had been since her last visit. A smile spread across Tamara's lips as she sank down into the old rocking chair to rest her weary bones. Her 125 years were catching up to her. She'd aged drastically in the last few years, and this incident with her husband and the king had only aged her more. She closed her eyes, enjoying the quiet of the cabin and the isolation of the woods. With a longing sigh, she stood and collected the herbs to perform the transportation spell. It was one of the very few spells the Council of Elders allowed the witches to use plants to perform. The use of herbs and plants for spells had been banned long before she was even born. She carried everything in her hands, having lost her bag somewhere along the way. She wasn't sure if it was still at the castle or in the woods. Not that it mattered. It, along with its contents, was gone, and she would have to make do. With a heavy heart, she walked the short distance to the stones and sat down to focus her thoughts. She laid out the herbs and started the spell. From the corner of her eye, she caught movement again amongst the trees. Her heart raced, and her stomach twisted in knots. They found her. She rushed through the spell, hoping to complete it before anyone stepped inside the circle. The wind picked up, swirling dirt and leaves around her. Through the cloud of dust, she saw a man run toward the stones. Frantically, she looked around, trying to keep him in her sight through the haze. A flash of light made her shield her eyes. A strong hand grabbed her from behind, and she swung her arms wildly. The wind blew through the circle, picking her and the man up off the ground, spinning them around before another flash of light nearly blinded her. The wind stopped, and she landed on the ground with a thud. The man landed right beside her. She rolled away and jumped to her feet, a red glowing ball of fire ready in her hand. "Stop, please!" The man held up his hands, palms facing out. "I just want to help." "True?" The fireball dwindled slightly. She was getting weaker. It wouldn't be long before she lost consciousness if she wasn't careful. "What are you doing here?" He looked at her and smiled weakly. "Thought you got rid of me, didn't you?" She lifted her hand to throw the flaming red ball, but it extinguished instead. Her power was fading. She had to do something quickly. She rubbed her hands together and managed to get a small spark of electricity and send it sailing in his direction. It thumped him in the chest, and he stumbled backward a few steps. "Ow! That hurt!" He stroked the area where the blue light hit while narrowing his eyes at her. Tamara's legs shook, and the world spun around her. Panic gripped her chest as she crumbled to her knees. Seconds later, an arm slipped under her back right before she hit the hard dirt. Her eyes closed, and darkness seeped in. And that is the end of the excerpt from Witch's War by A.K. Stuntz. And I really like how she built that in. I'm really interested to see kind of where, one, this places in the story. I'm assuming near the beginning, but I wonder if she's going to get a little bit more into Tamara and her husband's kind of history together. And I'm interested to see where this goes. I mean, obviously, you've built a whole lot of things. You've got the Order, the Council of Elders, a Palace of Witches. Man, it really exciting excerpt that we got to read. And I don't know if AK is here, but thank you for trusting me to read it. Really well done. All right, let me get myself back up here, and I'm going to get the promo back up as well. But yeah, absolutely. Very well done. Let me go through the chat a little bit here and kind of see what I missed. Let's see. Hey, Megan, how you doing? Hey, Tanya. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Emoji powers return. Oh, man. All right. Yes. Perfect. All right. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. So every time I do these readings, I do, my before, kind of talking about what it is. I do my in-between selfless promotion. I'll do the next reading, and then I'll finish it out with some more selfless promotion. So bear with me, because I know I have been posting just a ton of promotion videos lately. I'm very excited for my book, for the Kickstarter that I got going on, and all of that stuff. 3 months away. I'm 3 months away as of yesterday from release, June 6, 2024. So let me get into my same shameless self-promotion. All right, bring up the demo page again, and I'm going to go to my home page. So if you guys go to the homepage on my website, you'll see in big letters I got the Kickstarter. You can click the Kickstarter logo, you can click the picture, you can click whatever. It'll take you to the actual Kickstarter page where you can follow the Kickstarter to be notified once I launch it. Now, it is going to launch on March 18th, and this is important because on day one, March 18th, as soon as it launches, if I reach my funding target that day, which is, I hope, an attainable funding target, it's $500. If I reach that funding target on March 18th, before the close of the day, I'll do a giveaway of 2 signed copies of Armitage, which I got right here. So I'll give away 2 signed copies of Armitage if I hit my funding goal March 18th, day one that it opens up. So go on, click the notify when launch button, save it on your thing. It'll send you an email as soon as I launch it, and then you can go in there. I've got all kinds of digital rewards, which I pushed out in one of my Substack posts. You can go to my Substack and view the archive. I also released in an earlier Substack post the prologue to my book. So if you are interested at all, you can get a glimpse at the prologue and see if you want to read the rest of the book. Might not be for you. Who knows? But anyways, second part of self-promotion. As anybody knows who's known me long enough, I also run Indie Author Connect, which is a fabulous tool for authors, for any authors really, and it's completely free. Everything you see on the site is free for you to use, except for, of course, the service providers. They go at their own rates. This is just a portal to connect you with them. So, as you can see, we've got service providers, all kinds to go off of. We've got editors, cover designers, illustrators, map makers, marketers, the list goes on. We're trying to build up some photographers, translation writers. We've even got sensitivity readers under there, so on and so forth. I've got local events. Right now, we just have Europe, Canada, and the US. All three, the UK and Ireland are done. I'm still building out the rest of Europe. It's a slow-going process. Bear with me. We're building out marketing tools. We've got a couple podcasts listed in there. I've got one more I need to add. So this is what we got so far. You can sign up. These are also free for you to do. And then I'm going to start putting in some digital events. And soon enough, I've got Indie Author Awards that I'll be putting up there. These will be awards that I know of or that people, tell me about that I'll add there that authors can go and submit to try and win an award for their book, which helps them market and get recognition. All big things coming up. We also have this little author tools section that I haven't grown very, very much, but plan to get back into it, where it's just kind of free tools that authors can use, free for the most part, that authors can use to kind of help them, like social media tools, your map making and design tools, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's a really great site. I hope you guys enjoy it. We do have a Discord. You can click the link right there to join the Discord. We do have merchandise. If you purchase merchandise or donate, then all proceeds go to what I'm calling an author fund, which once it's built up high enough, it'll go to helping authors get their service providers all set up. Yeah, besides BTP, yeah. I do have, Between the Pages scheduled. I'm talking with, here, let me show my face again. Sorry about that. I'm scheduled for Between the Pages on June 6th, so release day. I'll be going live on my own TikTok, and then later that evening, I'll be going on for an interview with Between the Pages, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be a Thursday. So I'll be doing that. I do have 2 other interviews that I'm working on setting up, and we'll see how those go. Like I've said, I've set up locally for some signing events just in my local area at a bunch of the Barnes & Nobles and even one of the local bookstores, which the local bookstores were a little bit harder to get the author signings for than the Barnes & Noble was, but yeah, I digress. And I also have 2 conventions that I'm going to so far and hoping on a third one still. But the convention process is a slow-going process. It's a lot of wait time once you submit. But yeah, so anyways, that's my my little pitch, my little step aside. Sorry about that. Yeah, I really thought Barnes & Noble would be the harder one to to get into, but no, I mean they're pretty easy. And in the Discord I put, like, under the marketing tools, a little step-by-step guide on how you can get into Barnes & Noble. It's super simple. There are tons of them around the country. I mean, hell, if you hear back from enough of them, you could probably even schedule like a little tour around your area, up and down whatever coast you're in, or around a couple states that are surrounding your own. Who knows? But yeah, also I did see your Readsy. I need to get Readsy on there because they are free and they absolutely have a bunch of great stuff. BookBrush is another one too I need to put in there. But yeah, Barnes & Noble, I love it. They're great to work with. Everybody I've talked to so far has been wonderful about that. and I'm really excited to actually start getting in there. Doing the conventions and the fairs. For anybody that knows, under my real name, I wrote a kid's book. I'm not going to give my real name out here. I'm not going to talk about my kid's book here, but that is one of the best ways to sell my book, is doing like these arts and crafts fairs, little conventions, stuff like that. I've never done anything major like a convention, but I have gone to like local arts and crafts fairs, or, you know, like they've got some like, you know, farmers market or anything like that where I can just booth and sell my book. I've absolutely gone for it, and it's probably the best way to sell my book so far. So I'm hoping that the trend continues with Armitage. Anyways, so that was my self promotion. Thank you for bearing with me on that one. I'm going to get into the next reading, which is Horizon by David W. Adams. Let me get that up here. And again, phenomenal read. I just did a reading of this before I got in here, just to make sure that it was safe enough to do. He sent me a little bit of a longer submission. I'm going to kind of trim it down. I'm just going to be reading chapter 1 from this one, just because it was a little above the word count that I typically try to stick to. But yeah, let's get into it. Let me get my face out of the way so we can read that. Again, by all means, talk over the chat. I've got both chat windows open for Twitch, YouTube, and for TikTok. I won't be responding to it while I'm doing the reading, but I'll try to get to it as soon as I'm done with the reading. Let me get some water, and I'll get started. Give me 1 second. All right. So, he did send me this. He sent me prologue in chapter 1. Like I said, it was a little too long, but the prologue is really interesting, and I if I have some time at the end, I'll go back and I'll read just an excerpt from the prologue to see if you guys are a little bit more interested. But so right now, this is chapter 1, titled 2499. This is the captain. All hands to the emergency escape pods. The repeating klaxon indicating the battle was lost had been sounding for 4 minutes and 29 seconds. During that time, 8 crew members had lost their lives. Some had turned to sheer panic, and their fight or flight instinct had been scrambled. As another hit struck the hull of the Bellevue, metal beneath the impact twisted and screamed for mercy before being ripped away with the decompression. Darnell Franklin had been next to that bulkhead. As the violent nature of the scene unfolded, his body was torn backwards, impacting with the now jagged edges of the tattered hull, the vacuum of space using it to slice Darnell's body into 6 uneven pieces. As his blood began to collect in perfectly rounded globules outside of the ship, the emergency force field kicked in, numbing the effect of the chaos. The Bellevue was not a sizable ship by any means. Designed for a crew of 150, it was ergonomically designed. No wasted space, no wasted luxuries. And up until 27 minutes ago, it had been this crew's home for almost 7 years. The narrow corridors wound around the ship's structure like honeycomb, each hallway connecting to another to maximize both accessibility and functionality. Sat at the top of the ship was the bridge, and it was the actions in this particular room that had led to what was surely going to be the Bellevue's imminent destruction. Roman, there's no response from the escape pods. They're locked in place. I've got crew in there that can't evacuate. The panicked voice of the operations officer, Drusilla Ransom, could barely be heard through the noise of micro-explosions, the warning sirens, and the screams of the wounded being helped down toward the medical bay. The captain, Roman Knight, on the other hand, remained resolute and determined that his ship would not go down at the hands of pirates. Hunter, get down to deck 3 and blow the clamps on the escape pods manually. Get those crew members free. His first officer, Hunter Dresden, simply nodded at his captain and sprinted for the doors at the rear of the bridge, stopping momentarily to glance at Drusilla. I'll see you soon, sweetheart. He spoke softly to her before leaving the bridge. Drusilla felt a tear roll down her cheek, which was exacerbated by the fact a new impact from weapons fire took out their internal sensors. She could no longer see where anyone was on board, including Hunter. Captain, what are your orders? Shouted Weapons Officer Noah Sackett. His face sported wide eyes and an expression of pure fear and uncertainty. Roman leaned in his chair to the left and ran his opposite hand across his face. On the view screen in front of him, he could see a third vessel approaching. He knew the second they were in range, that would be the end of him, his crew, and any hope they had of finding what they had been searching for. Weapons status, Noah. A few taps into the console later, and Noah gave his answer. It didn't make for encouraging hearing. All 4 disruptor cannons are offline. The power cells have been destroyed. There's no way to fix them. The 4 torpedo bay's gone too. I mean, that whole fucking section's just gone. Noah, screamed Roman. Cut the bullshit and focus for me here. What do we have? Noah closed his eyes and took a deep breath as yet another shock rocked the ship. The communications station exploded in a shower of shattered glass, fractured wall panels, and bundles of severed wiring. The crew member stationed there was blown to pieces. We have 1 torpedo left available in the rear bay, but we don't have main engines to turn the ship to use it, and we have 3 targets. Roman cursed at their luck. This had been a potential salvage mission, and now half his crew were dead. And pretty soon, the rest would be joining them. He had been warned by so many people he had spoken to that this would be a trap. They had warned him the area was swimming with pirates, desperate to strip any ship that wandered into their territory. Resources were scarce across the galaxy, and there was no unity between people anymore. Think, Roman, think. An idea came to him in an instant, but it wouldn't be easy. He looked down towards the pilot's seat, and although her head was pouring with blood, matting her blonde hair to her shirt, his pilot, Samantha, was still at the controls. She was a tough cookie. Had she not been such an exceptional pilot, Roman would have had her retrained into security. Sam, talk to me. What kind of movement do we have? Well, boss, we have no star drive, no impulse power, and minimal thrusters. We're as close as you can get to a sitting duck. Minimal thrusters. That might just do it. Drew, can we channel whatever energy we have left into the thrusters? Everywhere except the weapons? Drusilla checked her console, and despite the damage, the bypass conduits were still functioning, albeit at minimal power. I can do it, but it's going to surge through the entire system and blow out everything. We'll be lucky to stay in one piece. Roman looked around at his crew. Each one nodded in turn. They knew if they didn't try this, then one piece would be a best-case scenario. Noah, when the ship swings round, I want that torpedo shoved down the lead ship's throat. Understand? Yes, sir. Sam, when the thrusters swing us halfway round, I want you to vent the rest of the fuel we have and cut the thrusters. The momentum should carry us round. I want those ships sat in a cloud of flammable shit. Got it? Samantha smiled as she realized what he was planning. You got it, boss. Nat. Roman stopped as he realized his communications officer was now just chunks of seared flesh on the floor next to a completely destroyed communications console. Does anyone have access to communications? I have internal comms rerouted here, offered Drusilla. Open a channel to the crew. An audible chime echoed around the bridge and traveled along every corridor still intact within the ship. Roman's deep and gravelly voice boomed throughout the ship. All hands, this is the captain. We are about to try a last-ditch attempt to get the ship clear and safe. If this works, we're going to be propelled fast and hard away from the battle. Force fields won't work, structural integrity will be compromised, and there's a huge risk that we'll be blown to pieces. But if we don't, those thieving bastards are going to do that for us anyway. I say we take them out with us. Get yourselves to any safe place you can find, and hold on. Drusilla closed the channel, and Roman gripped the arms of his chair tightly. The third ship was now in range. They were out of time. Now! Drusilla fiercely hit her control panel, sending every morsel of power not connected to the weapons surging through a single bypass conduit. As it did so, from the very base of the Bellevue, conduits exploded, Walls blew out from their panels, pipes came crashing down from the ceiling, and more holes were torn in the side of the ship. The cascading effect lasted mere seconds, but the devastation to the ship was immense. When the power reached the thrusters, they fired into life, indicated on Samantha's panel at 506% power. The ship swung violently to starboard, the force of which caused the already buckled ship to creak and groan as if in pain. As the back of the Bellevue reached 90 degrees from its previous position, Samantha cut the power and initiated a fuel dump. Sparkling vapor cascaded from the rear of the engines, and as the momentum carried the ship round to a full about face, that same momentum threw the fuel into the 3 advancing ships, which had now taken up an attack posture. The Bellevue was in position. Fire! Noah launched the final torpedo, a flash of green briefly lighting up the rear of the ship. The view screen switched to an aft view, and Roman slowly climbed to his feet as he watched it soar ever closer to the pirate vessels. Everyone was silent. Their attackers realized too late. The lead ship attempted to turn, but as the torpedo hit the fuel cloud, it ignited around all 3 ships. The lead ship's nose ignited with such force it blew it away from the rest of the vessel, sparking multiple explosions throughout the ship. 3 seconds later, and it blew apart entirely. The close proximity to the other 2 ships caught them in its wake, and they too were consumed by fire. Momentary elation ran through Roman's body before he saw the shockwave of what had just happened flying towards them at breakneck speed. "Everybody hang on!" he screamed. The shockwave hit the Bellevue so hard it tore both engines from the side of the ship, drifting away in random directions until they were nowhere to be seen. The remaining mass of the ship burst forward, rolling over and over in the wake of the wave, bulkheads crumbling, fire tearing through sections of the corridors, vaporizing anyone in its way. On the escape pod level, Hunter was clinging on to the support beams for dear life as the artificial gravity failed. He had managed to free 3 escape pods, but 2 had been struck by the severed engines and destroyed, and the 3rd was caught in the initial blast. "Bridge! Come in! Can you hear me?" But internal comms were now a thing of the past. All systems were effectively destroyed as they barrel-rolled towards oblivion. On the bridge, Roman was pinned in his seat, thankful for the foresight to install a harness after a previous encounter. Drusilla was unconscious against the legs of her console, pinned to the floor by a 19-inch piece of metal skewering her leg to the deck beneath. Noah was gripping a bundle of wires from underneath his now destroyed console with everything he had left, and Samantha was doing the same. As the shock wave dissipated, the ship stopped rolling, but their momentum didn't. As the view screen flickered back into life, Roman was able to see a planet coming up fast. There was no way they could break free in time. He looked around the room at his crew, his friends. This was all his fault. He had led them into this, and now he was going to get them killed after all. As he tried to stand, a deafening screech echoed around them, and the ship shook violently to the side, sending Roman back down into his chair. As he watched, the entire rear half of the Bellevue flew past them on an altered trajectory, spilling crew members into space. As Roman looked on, he saw Hunter's lifeless body drift away from the wreckage, and moments later, it was incinerated as it entered the planet's atmosphere. That was it. The Bellevue was going down with all hands, and her captain. And that is the end of the excerpt for Horizon, which I thought was phenomenal. Great opening chapter. And like I said, it has an opening prologue, but I'm running short on time here, so I'm not going to get to that one today. Let me get my webcam back up. All right, and get the promo back up as well. All right, yeah. Both excellent readings tonight. I really appreciate both authors for trusting me to read it. I had a blast reading those. Really well done. I'm really excited. And honestly, I'll probably end up looking for both of these to add to my ever-growing TBR. I'll probably never get through it in my lifetime. But anyways, I greatly appreciate everybody for sticking around. Thank you for bearing with me. and supporting these incredible authors. And as I always do at the end of each session, remind everybody that at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so here in about 20 minutes, there's always a Between the Pages podcast where they interview authors. Megan in the chat is one of the co-hosts, and Sean Amick is the host of the Between the Pages podcast. By all means, go check it out. If you're an author and would like an interview, go to Sean's page and click on the link tree. There's a calendar that you can go and populate whatever time works best for you out of what's open. I highly encourage it. It's a great marketing opportunity for anybody who wants to talk about their book and get it in front of other readers. And other than that, that's all I've got to say. I appreciate everybody for coming out. Thank you for supporting the other indie authors in this community. And I look forward to next week's reading. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.